Hey guys, I am just back from a weekend with Mel at the film school conference in Lucca in Italy, and I just wanted to share with you via video some of the big takeaways from the weekend. I think there were 18 film schools or something, and 28 people there, and it was really like a massive eye opener to see sort of what the breadth and scope of European film schools are really all about. Not so many had screen acting programs. Some of them were sort of in bigger institutions that had theatre or acting training with and collaborated for sure with those actors from those programs, but a lot of them didn't teach screen acting in the way that we do. Um, there were there were some that did, and so I had some interesting chats with some of those people. Um, it started off every day with the morning of screenings. We were actually first, and we screened Herzblut, which is the cannibal scene, which we chose because we thought, I mean, it was Mel's favourite film, and I thought it was definitely one of the ones that was up there as being one of the best films that were shot during the last year at DBS. Um, and we showed it, and what was really eye-opening to us is the reaction we kind of got, is it was it was really hard for people to watch. I think we heard a lot about that would never get past the ethics committee, which we were saying, thank God we don't have an ethics committee that would control content, because we don't control content at all, which I think is a really good thing. I don't think censorship is really the way to go in a film school. But a lot of these government institutions had to deal with, well, film schools that were funded by government institutions had to deal with jumping through hoops for what the content of the films was, which was really bizarre for us to really get our head around what sort of environment that must be for the students. Um, yeah, there was in the afternoons we had a range of different panels, conversations, and also sort of conferences, which were presentations. After a week of presentations, it was quite a slog to get through 3 more days of presentations. Um, but we tried to keep things interesting. We were in this massive church that's no longer a church, uh, and yeah, it was epic. So the first panel was learning by doing, and Mel was on that panel, and we really showed what sort of a film school we are, and that we really do take that to heart. Some of the other ones were promoting for sure that they learn by doing, by saying that they have over 50% of the work is practical, and we were saying most we were over 90% of our work is practical, which they said, well, we're accredited by a university, and there's no way that we could strip out the academic work like you have. And we were like, yeah, we're also accredited by a university. And they were like, no, but we're the UK system or something. We were like, yeah, we're also the UK system, so we have very much similar things going on in terms of external examiners and all that sort of carry on. So we were able to talk with those UK universities and say, this is what we've done with what you have to jump through and what you have to do within that UK system. Maybe you could do the same. And they were saying that would never work. They actually asked me they haven't asked me formally, but they were talking about asking me to be their external examiner. So I would be really keen on doing that. Of course, I would have to make sure that all their work is just to the standards of the UK. But it would be about sort of sharing their vision for really, really training actors as opposed to training academics. Which I suppose you have to walk a fine line, and we're on the end of a spectrum, and I think that that's our offering, and that's what we're doing. And I think that's the sort of students we want to keep attracting, as the ones that are wanting to work, not wanting to study. Yeah, there were lots and lots of other really good takeaways as well. We got a really good insight into what the big German film school in Babelsberg is doing. Martin from there actually asked us to collaborate with some of his students, which would be quite interesting. I'm not sure how it would work with actors. 95% of their films are shot in German, so it would maybe not be so easy for non-German speakers to collaborate. But I'm sure there'd be there's some collaboration between the film students for sure, and maybe the German-speaking actors. And maybe on that 5% that they do speak English, that they do English films, we might do some collaborations. But we're definitely in conversation about that. What we found out from there is that they are just working in such a different way to us. They, from day one, a producer comes in and they are a producer for the whole time. And if a director comes in, they're a director from day one. There's no opportunities for them ever to try out any other discipline. They're completely in their own discipline for the whole way through. And if they decide halfway through that they want to change, they then need to reapply, drop out, reapply, and come back in. And the chances of them getting a spot are not so high because there's such a small amount of places on that course. They have massive budgets. He said, we don't do any low budget film anymore. We don't do low budget films. I think the least they do for any film is 10,000 euros for a film. They only do a very small amount of films per year. It's just working in a whole different way. We were actually with all of these film schools, we were really on the very end of the spectrum of how many films we make, which was super interesting. There's these other film schools that just they don't make a film until the script is perfect, and they the head shooter is very much involved in what the content of that is, how well it's written, choosing the best film out of all of the students might write a film and pitch a film, and then it's the tutor that chooses the best. And a very vocal, actually. There was an instance where they told one of the Italian students was there, because it was their film school, right? And he said quite publicly in front of everyone, you were a director because your script wasn't good enough. And everyone went, no. She said, he actually said, because you weren't good enough. You weren't good enough. So that's why you were a director with 4 other directors on this film, is because you weren't good enough. And one of the other tutors from another school says it wasn't she wasn't good enough. Her script wasn't good enough. And then he said yes, and he reiterated. He said, your script was not good enough, in front of everyone. It was like, wow, it's a whole different sort of world. It was quite interesting getting into, I mentioned during, I was on a panel for teaching acting for camera collaboratively. And I mentioned that that I was really interested in working with actors on making them fit for asking for direction, because they're not necessarily going to get it, right? And so asking them or training actors to sort of look after themselves, to make sure that they get what they need from a collaboration with a director, and to lead that process from their position, which is not a leader, right? So they're working with someone in a hierarchical system where they're asking for direction, but they can lead that process to get what they need for their own performance. So that sparked really interesting discussion actually, and we got onto Me Too and how we train, or certainly like we're beginning to train the actors to look after themselves and to get what they need and to say no when it's the right time to say no, and not to go blindly into some situations where they are not doing what they want to be doing, or not looking after themselves. And so that sort of sparked a little bit of a debate, but then quite interestingly, it wasn't really spoken about for the rest of the time. So that was quite interesting. What were some other takeaways? We just learned that there are lots of ways to collaborate with each other across film schools. Lots and lots of film schools are exchanging students. They're exchanging tutors for semesters. So that's something that if you guys are interested in, it could be really interesting to get involved in if you want to go and do your thing at a film school for somewhere in Europe or Russia or the United States, or where were we? We were also in Beirut. Where's Beirut? It's Lebanon. So those are the 3 schools outside of Europe. But if you're interested in doing that, then I'm sure there's opportunity for us to exchange. Particularly Josh, if you wanted to go and teach a voice reel project in a very short amount of time to some students, some acting students, then I'm sure that there would be we could organize doing that and do an exchange with another tutor or something like that. I mean, it's not super simple, but I'm sure there's so much willingness from so many people just to exchange ideas, find out how we're doing things, how we might do things better. We also did, Mel and I did, the last thing we did on the last day was we did a progressive administration conference, and we ran a holocratic meeting with some of these with people in role. So we actually opened up a learning experience glass frog meeting, and did that, and processed some imaginary tensions, like one of them was there's always cups left in the classroom, and so we processed that holocratically, and Mel facilitated and I was the secretary, and it was really a mixed bag. It was so funny. I suppose we were working with, I suppose, everyone in this conference was in some way, shape or form a manager already. So they had power, right? And we were talking about them giving up their power to their teams, and sharing that management sort of, and they were sort of like really cagey about it. It was really eye-opening actually about how much a leader wants to hold on. And so it really gave me great admiration for Dave, actually, that he is not like that. He's wanting to empower his people, which is incredibly humble. Yeah, I think it's great. I think that he's and really the biggest takeaway from this whole weekend is that we're doing things really, really progressively and really, really well, and we're holding our own. Although we don't give our students budgets, like a lot of other schools have budgets for their students. They have government funding. They're doing things, there's lots of cool stuff going on out there. But I think that we're really doing something radical and really something quite the very end of a spectrum of what's possible. And it made me really, really humble on one sense, because there's so many bigger than us. Sort of, we're small fry compared to others. Some other people had like so many students, and we just have a few. And but really, it was. At the same time as it was humbling, it made us feel that we're really holding our own in the world and that we've got a place in it. So that's me. I hope that was interesting to you. If not, too bad. You made it this far. I hope you're all having a nice time. Thanks for listening.